who is actually our clinical specialist and senior manager, and she has done her MBA in hospital administration from Loyola College of Education, Chennai, and she also done his MPhil in optometrist from Birla Institute of Technology and Science, Pilani. She has actually more than 20 years diversified experience in clinical optometrics and academies from Shankar Netralaya, the Elite School of Optometry, and Sunayana Laser Vision Center, Chennai. She will be taking the ERG session for next 3 days. So please welcome Mrs. Kiran and Mr. Venkatesh.
Thank you, Yash. Venkatesh, sir, you would like to say something, sir?
I suggest you carry on with the topic because they are all eagerly waiting to learn about the electrophysiology.
Good morning, team. It's very nice to see so many participants early in the morning. This reminds me of, my days at LV Prasad Institute of Hyderabad, where we at 6:45 we used to, just rush and have brush and go for the grand rounds at 7 o'clock. And they were very particular about that. So I'm sure most of the people over here are the optometrists. I'm not sure. The person who's coordinating the show, it's written as CM Gupta.
So we have a combination of team optometrist and ophthalmologist. We also have our director and vice chair, Dr. Pradeep Agarwal, our director and vice chair, Dr. Ashik Khurana with us. And also Dr. Sanjay Chanda is director of our education.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. It's for who are the audience I'm speaking to. It's really nice. It gives us all a very good, vibe for me to start the class. So I will, instead of delaying more, I shall go into the subject again directly. But just a small curious thing which I wanted to know was how many of us over here have used the ERG machine? Just roughly, have at least seen the machine.
So I think everyone has seen the machine.
Okay, and hands-on machine?
Very few, I think.
Very few. Okay, fine. So today I will start my class according to the audience which I have. I will directly go into the electrophysiology part of it and then come back to the know-how of how to use the machine and, how to go ahead and, refine your recordings and etc. Okay, so English and Hindi would be fine for the language, right?
Yes, that would be.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'll just share the screen. Just a moment. Is my screen shared?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so today's class is on Roland Consult RetiScan 21, which is the name of a machine. Roland Consult is a machine which is from Germany, and this machine is capable of doing all the electrophysiological examinations. Okay, so 1 minute. This is our machine's brochure, where we have clearly depicted as to what this machine is and what this machine can do, and what are the parameters, the technical specifications which are available on the machine, and what are the customized protocols which can be incorporated into the machine depending on the availability and depending on the needs of the doctor. Okay, so this is how the machine looks like, and this is very important. If you see, this is our basic machine, and in this picture, what I'm trying to show it to everybody is, in an electrophysiological equipment, what do you require? Usually an electrophysiological equipment requires two main parts. Okay, one, you need a computer which can do your software analysis and send information to of the required test which has to be done, and you need stimulators to stimulate the retina, basically. Okay, to get the required amount of flash intensity into the eye and then take the reading from it. So you have two types of stimulators. It could either be a pattern stimulator, where you will generate the patterns for the pattern ERG, pattern VEPs, and you can get the information for the multifocal VEPs also from that. or you can have a flash stimulator. Now the flash stimulator can be 3 different stimulators which comes with the Roland machine. It could be either a big GANS field over here. I hope my cursor is visible.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so this is your big GANS field. So it's a dome-shaped diffuse illumination stimulator, which is like your Humphrey machine, and it is capable of illuminating the retina completely. Okay, so you have the mass illumination of your retina. That means you're giving complete diffuse illumination to your rods and cones and other retinal cells at the same time, where they are able to stimulate and give us a response. Okay, and all the light intensity can be varied from here. This stimulator has an LED base, is an LED base. It has 3 LEDs, white, red, and blue, with which we can vary the intensity of the light and get the information. So this is your main stimulator. It is called the big GANS field. Then you have a small one over here, which is called the mini GANS field. Okay, and what is the importance of this mini GANS field is, whatever you can do with your big GANS field, you can do with your mini GANS field. So in this, on the big GANS field, अगर मैं ये प्रोटोकॉल्स ERG के प्रोटोकॉल्स रन कर रही हूँ, ISCV के प्रोटोकॉल्स, तो मैं ये मिनी GANS फील्ड के ऊपर भी रन कर सकती हूँ. ठीक है, तो जो भी ये बड़ा GANS फील्ड करेगा, ये मिनी GANS फील्ड भी करेगा. इसमें क्या सुविधा रहेगी? इसमें ये सुविधा रहेगी कि जब आप बच्चों को एग्जामिन करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, ओके, छोटे बच्चों को या अनकोऑपरेटिव अडल्ट्स को, या कोई भी जिसमें जो आपका चिन्ह नहीं रख सकता है GANS फील्ड के ऊपर, उसको आप इस मिनी GANS फील्ड के ऊपर उतने ही कॉन्फिडेंस से रिकॉर्ड कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, चाहे वो ERG हो, चाहे वो फ्लैश VEP हो, या कोई भी आपका ब्लू फ्लैश VEP हो, या ब्लू फ्लैश ERG हो, या रेड फ्लैश ERG हो. ठीक है, तो ये इसका जो प्रोटोकॉल है, मिनी GANS फील्ड का जो प्रोटोकॉल है, वो भी ISCV से मैच होता है. और ISCV क्या है, मैं थोड़ी देर में बताती हूँ आपको. ठीक है, और ये रहा आपका बेबी फ्लैश. ये एक स्क्रीनिंग डिवाइस है. अगर आपको अपने क्लिनिक में जल्दी से पता करना है कि क्या हो रहा है, अगर इस पेशेंट का रेटिना काम कर रहा है, नहीं कर रहा है, ये आप इस मशीन से पता कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, तो ये रहा हमारा रोलेंट का ERG मशीन, जिससे हम सारे टेस्ट करेंगे. इससे हम बेसिक टेस्ट जैसे कि फुल फील्ड ERG से लेके हमारा जो मल्टीफोकल VEP है, सारे टेस्ट इसी सिस्टम से हो जाएंगे. इस सिस्टम में एक एम्पलीफायर है, 2 एम्पलीफायर है एक्चुअली. एक प्री एम्पलीफायर है जहाँ पे हमारे इलेक्ट्रोड्स अटैच होते हैं, और एक एम्पलीफायर है जो यहाँ पे रहेगा. और यहाँ पे चैनल्स हैं. चैनल्स 1 क्या डिपिक्ट करते हैं? चैनल्स 1 हमें ये बताते हैं कि राइट आई का इलेक्ट्रोड कहाँ पे जाएगा, लेफ्ट आई का इलेक्ट्रोड कहाँ पे जाएगा. ठीक है, और ये जो एम्पलीफिकेशन सिस्टम है, ये क्या करता है, ये जो हमने छोटे वेव्स रिकॉर्ड किए हैं ERG में या VEP में, उसे एम्पलीफाई करके हमें यहाँ पे स्क्रीन पे दिखाता है. ठीक है, मैं आगे जाती हूँ. इस मशीन के साथ 2 बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बुक्स हमें दिए जाते हैं. एक है आपका रोलेंट का जो मैनुअल है, वो है ये वाला. ठीक है, रेटिपोर्ट शॉर्ट मैनुअल हम इसे बोलते हैं. और इसमें आप जो भी टेस्ट करना चाहते हैं, उस टेस्ट को कैसे मेजर करना है, उसके लिए पेशेंट कहाँ पे बैठना है, कहाँ से वो टेस्ट एग्जामिन होना है, कितने सेंटीमीटर में वो टेस्ट करेंगे हम लोग, अगर डायलेटेड होगा प्यूपल या नहीं डायलेटेड होगा, डार्क अडेप्टेड होगा पेशेंट या लाइट अडेप्टेड होगा, उसकी सारी इंफॉर्मेशन आपको इस मैनुअल से मिल जाएगी. ठीक है, अगर आप कोई भी टेस्ट, अगर आप बेबी फ्लैश को रख के फ्लैश करना, VEP रिकॉर्ड करना चाहते हैं, तो आपको सिर्फ उस पेज पे जाना है और उसके जो प्रोटोकॉल वहां पे दिए गए हैं उसको फॉलो करना है. इसके साथ एक बुक भी दिया जाता है जिसका नाम है एटलस ऑफ टेस्टिंग एंड क्लिनिकल एप्लीकेशन ऑफ रोलेंट इलेक्ट्रोफिजियोलॉजिकल इक्विपमेंट. इस बुक में आपको सारे क्लिनिकल एग्जाम्पल्स मिल जाएंगे जो कि इसी मशीन से लिए हुए हैं, इसी मशीन के द्वारा यहाँ पे टेस्टिंग किया हुआ है, और इस मशीन से जो रिपोर्ट्स जनरेट होती हैं वो यहाँ पे बताई गई हैं. ठीक है, ये हो गया आपका ये. और अगर आप क्लिनिक में हैं तो प्लीज ये दोनों मैनुअल यूज कीजिए, ये आपके लिए बहुत हेल्पफुल रहेंगे. Okay, so Retiport 21, excuse me. Yeah, Retiport 21 is used to produce electrically evoked potentials. It has been designed to generate the visual stimuli in order to measure and display the electrical signals produced by the retina and the visual system. So what are the examinations which can be possible on our Retiport are the ERG, electroretinogram, visually evoked potential, electrooculography, electronystagmography, and pupillography. So on the whole, we have just explained in brief what are the examinations which can be done on the machine. And it depends and it varies depending on the customization of the doctors, which program they have incorporated into their hospital manual. Okay. So, but this modular design helps us, and it is very user friendly for working around for the electrophysiological unit. Just a moment. Okay. And what are the indications for electrophysiological tests? The common indications for the electrophysiological tests are inherited retinal diseases like the heredomacular degenerations, all types of retinitis pigmentosa, acquired retinal degenerative conditions, in patients with unexplained visual loss, in patients with vascular diseases like the central retinal vein occlusion or central artery occlusion, where you are interested in knowing what is the prognosis, whether the patient is able to, is the patient having an ischemic type of disease, or is the patient having a non-ischemic type of disease? Do we need a very early intervention with the laser or with anything else to help and save the patient's vision? Okay, and in infants with questionable vision, when you have a patient who has nystagmus or who has doll's eye phenomena, where you're not able to really comment and tell the parent whether the patient will be able to see or not, whether the infant will have a very good visual prognosis or not for the life, you can go ahead and do your electrophysiological test and identify if there is any retinal function or not. And in cases where there is toxic and nutritional eye diseases, you can go ahead and do an electrophysiological examination. I have briefly named all these diseases, but you can discuss these diseases in detail, because the way the ERG, the way the VEP pattern, the way the pattern ERG comes on for these tests is totally different. Okay, each disease can be discussed very briefly as we go further. Okay. So this is an indication chart which I usually suggest in my clinic, where I ask them to take a printout of this and keep it on the table there. So in case if the patient has a hereditary retinal dystrophy, we usually advise a full field ERG, we do a pattern ERG, and if required, we also go ahead and do a EOG. Like say if it's a Best vitelliform dystrophy and you want to rule out how well the retina is for the patient, I go ahead and do an ERG and an EOG in combination. So this chart briefly tells us, or a person who's there in the clinic, as in case you get these provisional diagnosis, it is not that only one test would help you in identifying what the diagnosis could be. Okay, so you need to do multiple examinations to understand what is happening. Say if you have a patient with retrobulbar neuritis, where the patient sees nothing and the ophthalmologist sees nothing, you prefer to start with a pattern ERG and you do a flash VEP, and you understand whether the patient has a problem at the level of the macula or the ganglion cell, and go ahead and further do a pattern VEP to understand what is the level of the visual difficulty the patient is having. Okay, so this chart is very helpful. You can have this on your clinic in the notice board, wherever you are able to view this very comfortably and use this chart effectively. These are patient windows. I will come back to this a little later, because I will directly go to the what is electrophysiology and the ERG today. Okay, and I'm planning to go into the multifocal ERGs and the VEPs. Tomorrow I would be discussing about the pattern ERGs and the multifocal ERGs. Excuse me. Hello, you can stop me if you have any issues. You can ask me any questions if you want. Okay, you can interrupt, no problem. Anybody wants to say something?
No, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay, so today we will be discussing about the electrophysiological tests which are there and how the electrical potentials are taken from the eye. Tomorrow we will be discussing about the multifocal ERGs, the pattern ERGs, and the VEPs. Day after tomorrow we will be discussing about the flash VEPs and the pattern VEPs, and we can take up all the questions which you have, as you know, any clinical difficulties or any application difficulties or any difficulties which you have in understanding the subject. I would be very happy to explain it to you. Okay. So I will go ahead and continue with the session. What is electrophysiology of the eye? We all know what is ECG of the heart, right? The same thing, ECG of the heart is you getting the information from the heart where the electrical potentials of how the heart is functioning is recorded. Same way, the electrophysiology of the eye is you study the electrical potentials from the retina and you understand how well they are functioning. So the electrophysiological examination helps you to assess the function of the visual pathway. Now we all know where the visual pathway starts from. It starts from the retina and goes to the occipital cortex. Okay. So we know that, you know, if the light rays fall on the cornea through the pupil, through the lens, through the vitreous at the retina. From the retina, you have the photoreceptors absorbing the light, and as they absorb the light, you have electrical stimulus which is being given by the cells which are there, the bipolar cells. And from the bipolar cells, it goes to the ganglion cells where the signals are converted into electrical signals, and they are passed through the optic nerve to the lateral geniculate body, then the optic radiations, and then to your occipital cortex. Okay, so we all know this visual pathway. We have studied in detail about all this, and we need to understand that again the retina is made up of 10 layers and they all are specialized cells, and the most important cells which are there in the retina are the photoreceptor cells, because the photoreceptor cells are the only cells which are capable of capturing the light when the light is stimulated or when the light is shined onto them. Okay, especially the outer disc segments which are there in your photoreceptors, the rods and the cones have the pigment which is capable of absorbing the light and converting this light energy into chemical energy, and thereby processing it and sending it to the ganglion cells as an electrical energy, which is then processed as an image by the brain. So all the visual processing which happens, it happens at the level of the brain. Okay, so we need to understand this. So what are we trying to measure? We are trying to measure this electrical potential, which is a very small potential, which is generated at the level of the retina. So when would you do an electrophysiological test in the clinic? You may have to do an electrophysiological test in the clinic whenever you have a media opacity, especially like a patient with a near total cataract, where you want to know whether the patient will benefit post-surgery after the intraocular lens is placed, or a patient with a total vitreous hemorrhage, where you're not able to visualize what is happening behind at the retinal level, or a patient with a corneal opacity, where you plan to go ahead and do a corneal, transplantation to see if the patient will be benefited from the transplant or not, or to give a prognosis to the patient whether he will get vision in his late in life or not after any intervention has been done. So at that time, when you have to make a decision, the electrophysiological tests come handy, where you can use a flash VP to understand whether your visual pathway is working or not. You can use your full field ERG and understand whether your outer retinal layers are functioning or not, whether your rods and cones are reacting to light or not, whether your outer and the inner retinal layers are working or not, whether you're able to get a good response from your full field ERG, whether you're able to plot any electrical responses or any information from your ERG. Okay, so this comes very helpful for ophthalmologists, especially in the clinic, where they need to take a decision based on operating on a patient or suggesting the patient a further management. In patients with diffuse retinal degeneration, so when you have a patient with a diffuse retinal degeneration like a rod cone dystrophy or a Stargardt's disease, or say a patient with a retinitis pigmentosa, then it becomes very difficult for us to explain to the patient. When the patient comes and asks to us, well, madam, will I be going blind? Will I lose my vision completely for life? Or will my children be affected with this disease? So it is very difficult to answer such questions to your patient. So before that, we need to understand as to what percentage of his retina is working, and that can only be done by your ERG, because the ERG is the only objective evaluation which you can do to assess the function of your retina. Okay, yes, we do have a lot of subjective evaluation tests which are available with us, like this Snellen's visual acuity, you do Humphrey visual fields, you can record a contrast sensitivity to understand your retinal functions, but all those tests are subjective. They are dependent on your patient's responses. Okay, and in small children, if it's a small child, I cannot expect a small child to perform a Humphrey visual field to analyze, whether he can see a Snellen's, whether he can see the buzzer, like see the light and press the buzzer for me, and how reliable is he, when he does that. And if it is a small child, even if this child reads the Snellen's equity, I am not sure as to how much of his retina is really functioning. Or if the child refuses to read the board, I'm not sure. So in at that point in time, when there are so many doubts, like, whether the retina of the patient is functioning, whether the 80% of the retina or the 90% of the photoreceptors of the patients are functioning or not, you need to run a full-field ERG to understand how good his function of the retina is. And the most important thing is the ERG is an objective assessment. It does not involve anything from the patient's point of view to, any patient's cooperation point of view to do the examination. Okay, and in cases with maculopathy, when you have a diabetic maculopathy, or if you have a macular hole, or if you have a central serous retinopathy, where post treatment of the CSR also, if the fluid might have resolved, but the patient may be complaining that his visual acuity is not as clear as it was before, and you may have so many doubts, like on the OCT, as structurally you don't see any fluid, but the patient still complains that he is not happy with his visual outcome which is there. So you can run a multifocal ERG to see if there is any focal retinal changes which are happening. Okay, to see if there is any particular ring or particular area of the parafoveal area or the central area at the foveal level has any changes because of the pathology he had. Okay, in drug-induced maculopathy. And this is especially in the chloroquine toxicity, this is very important. As we all know, in late stages of chloroquine toxicity, what happens is the patient, you have total RP degeneration which happens, and because of that, the patient may lose his vision. Okay, so this chloroquine molecules have the affinity to get adherent to the RPE, that is the retinal pigment epithelial layer, and they cause changes. Okay, and they cause so much of toxic changes that at one point in time, the photoreceptors just die, and the patient loses his vision from 6 by 6 to 1/60 also. So we have seen in cases that in patients who have been on chloroquine for a longer period of time do have these toxic changes recorded. So what do we do? So there is a new protocol which says that you need to do a screening for the patients who are on the chloroquine, okay, on the drug. So even before you start prescribing the drug, the chloroquine drug, the physician asks for a multifocal ERG. Okay, the physician asks for a 10-2 visual fields, and after that you go into a color vision, and then you go ahead and do your ERGs. Okay, so you have a baseline as to what is the patient's vision, what is the patient's visual field, especially the central 10-2. How is this multifocal ERG, especially the central cone responses, and then follow the patient from there. Okay, so it has been incorporated into the screening protocol, because in case if you see an early change on the OCT, okay, especially they say that do a spectral domain OCT in patients with chloroquine toxicity, because on the spectral domain you can differentiate between the outer segments, that is the ellipsoid zone and the myoid zone, very clearly, and you can see what are the changes which are happening at that level. You can do a multifocal ERG and identify if the patient is having reduced responses in the central ring of responses. You can do a 10-2 and see if there is any scotoma which is there in your central area, or a paracentral scotoma which you're looking for. So these have become the new protocols in assessing how much of the toxic changes which are happening. And when we do these multifocal ERG, in case if we find any early changes which are happening or a reduction in the amplitude, we advise the physician, or based on the examination results, we ask the physician to take a call to stop the drug, because we know, and it has been proved, that the long-term effects of this drug can be very, very bad on the retina. Okay. So in cases with drug-induced maculopathy, where you want to follow the patient, screen the patient, or decide on whether to stop the drug or not, you go ahead and do a multifocal ERG. In optic neuropathies, especially in retrobulbar optic neuropathies, and we know that, the optic nerve gets affected. You can run a pattern VEP and see if there is any delay in the implicit times, okay, delay in the latencies. We all know 100 milliseconds is a normal latency, which we usually look for at the pattern VEP. So if there is a delay from the 100 milliseconds, whether it is 120 or 130, we can see what is happening at the level of the brain. And this is the only test which helps us to see what's really going on into your brain, okay? And sometimes to differentiate a maculopathy from an optic neuropathy. So the patient may just have any macular changes, or the patient may have ganglion cells also involved into his pathology. To differentiate whether it's only a maculopathy, only the macular photoreceptors are being affected, or you have any ganglion cells also in the disease process, can be analyzed with the help of running a pattern ERG and a pattern VEP simultaneously for the patient. Okay, so these electrophysiological tests are very, very important to understand the objective function of your retina. Okay, and because the retina has specialized cells like the rods and cones, the bipolar cells, the amacrine cells, the ganglion cells, you have to have different tests so that you can stimulate these different cells and get these information. Okay. This is just an image which shows as to what happens in the eye. I will just briefly explain what happens. You have the light hitting the retina. Once the light hits the retina, the rods and cones which are there absorb all the light. And here you have this retinal structure, which is your RPE. This is your photoreceptors. You have your rods and cones. The one in the green, red, and the blue are your cones. Okay, these are actually the red, green, blue cones. That is of the long, short, and the medium wavelength cones which you have. And you have in the gray are the rods. Usually they are depicted like this just to indicate that, the cones are responsible for your color vision. C for cones, C for color vision. Cones for your day vision are important. Okay, and rods rods are insensitive to color. They see everything in gray shades. Rods are responsible for the peripheral vision, and rods are responsible for the night vision. Okay, so what happens when the light hits the retina? The rods and cones become very alert. The rhodopsin or the photopsin, which is there in the optic disc of the segments of the rods and cones, absorb all the light which is falling to them. Depending on that, they generate a chemical reaction, which is called a phototransduction. I would not go into the details of it. I will just explain that there is some chemical changes which are happening, and this information of the chemical changes which are happening, the photopic energy, which was, the light energy, which was captured by the for rods and cones, is converted into a chemical energy by here at the bipolar level. And from the bipolar level to the ganglion cells, you have this chemical energy converted into the electrical energy, okay, which is then transmitted by the optic nerve to the brain. Okay, so you have a lot of things happening. You have neurotransmitters which are happening over here. You have some cells being hyperpolarized, some cells being depolarized. You have a lot of horizontal cells which are acting over here. You have interconnection cells, and all these cells help in the transmission of this signal which is generated because of the light to the brain, and so that we can see the image. Okay, so all this is done in a fraction of a second. So this is what I was telling. You have your photoreceptors, you have your ganglion cells, and you have all these disc segments which are there. These contain pigments, and these pigments help to act accordingly. So once a light hits a rod cell, what happens is the flow chart which is over here. So in the end, there are some chemical changes which are happening, and the membrane is polarized, hyperpolarized, and an electrical impulse is sent to the brain. And because there are so many special cells in the retina, you need to to get and identify the different layer or the cells which are functioning. You need to run different tests. So to tell briefly, you have the ERG, which gives you the information from the photoreceptors, that is the rods and cones. You have the ERG B wave, which ERG B wave gives you information about the inner retinal layers and the amacrine cells, how well they are functioning. You have the oscillatory potentials, which again tells us the health of the inner retinal layers and the amacrine cells. You have the pattern ERG, where it gives you both the information of your photoreceptor cells and your ganglion cells, and you do an EOG test to understand the health of the RPE cells. Okay, so this is again a further description as to how an ERG waveform looks like. An ERG waveform contains an A wave, B wave, and a C wave. Okay, usually a C wave is present over there, but it is very difficult to record, and we are not able to really appreciate the C wave over there. We use a special test to record the C wave, which is the EOG. Okay, I will start with the A wave. A wave is found as a negative deflection and originates from the photoreceptors, that is our rods and cones. And the B wave is again a positive deflection from the initial negative A wave and arises from the inner nuclear layers, the bipolar and the Mueller cells. Then you have the oscillatory potentials, which are the positive wavelengths of the ascending limb of the B wave and originate from the amacrine cells. Okay, so to explain what are the commonly used electrodiagnostic tests are, the commonly used electrodiagnostic tests are just a small interruption. You would want me to stop the class by 8 o'clock or?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, by 7:50, next 10 minutes, we can have discussions.
Sure. So wherever I complete at 7:50, I will stop. I will continue from there tomorrow. Okay. The commonly used electrodiagnostic test, the electroretinography, which gives us the function and information of the rods and cones and the inner retinal layers. You do an electrooculography to give the information, get the information from the retinal pigment epithelial cells, and you do a visually evoked potential to get the information from the optic nerve and the macula. We've been discussing electroretinography in detail. So electroretinography is a test to detect abnormal electrophysiological function of the retina. So wherever you have a slightest doubt as to how the function of the retina is of a patient, you go ahead and do an ERG. Okay, as I've already explained, the electrical activity comes from the photoreceptors, that is the health of your rods and cones, the Mueller cells, and the RPE cells. During the test, an electrode is placed on the cornea at the front of the eye to measure the electrical responses after a brief flash of light or a pattern which stimulates the retina. Okay. How is it done? This is done with the help of an electrodiagnostic equipment, which is the Retiport scan, where you have the computer, you have the pattern stimulator, you have the flash stimulator, and you have the mini Ganzfeld. Okay. There are three types of ERGs. Okay, as I say, three types of ERGs because you can look into the photoreceptor level differently. Okay, depending on what type of stimulus you present to the eye. So the first type of ERG is a full field ERG, which is a mass response of the retina. The second one is a multifocal ERG, where you have a focal area of the retina being stimulated. Then you have a pattern ERG. Pattern ERG, you stimulate the particular photoreceptors of the central macula and the ganglion cell and try to get the information. So here in this slide, I'm trying to explain what is happening. So you have a full field ERG, which has a protocol. Now you have a protocol as to how to do these tests and how they should be examined, how the patients should be that, and all that is defined from the ISCEV, that is the International Standards of Clinical Electrophysiological Society. Okay, so what the ISCEV society does is it designs the protocols, like what are the stimulus patterns which should be there, or the parameters should be there in any electrophysiological machine. Where should the patient be seated? How these tests should be recorded? What is the contact lens electrodes which should be used? What are the cup electrodes which should be used? And how many examination protocols will be there? Like you run 100 averages, or you run 3 averages, or in between the averages of the test light or the flash of light, what should be the interstimuli between between the, when you want to measure for the rods or cones or for the multifocal ERGs, what type of a pattern you will use in multifocal ERG. An M sequence should be used, or a checkerboard pattern for your ERG. The luminance should be 100%. So all these things need not be memorized by us. They are already incorporated into the system at the software level, and they're all defined protocols. We can also follow the ISF standard protocols, which are available on the internet, and they are available, they should be available in your lab also, which will help us to define and understand these tests better. Okay, so a full-field ERG contains 6 protocols or 5 protocols, where you have, what you're doing is you're trying to measure the rod function separately. The combined response gives you the information between the rods, cones, and the inner retinal layers. Then you are able to plot the oscillatory potentials exclusively to understand whether how is the health of the amacrine cells. Then you go ahead and stimulate a condition to measure your cone responses, and then stimulate a condition for your purely cone responses. Okay, so all these 5 tests, when done together in your clinic in a dark adapted state, and by changing this flash stimuli, you will end up in having a full field ERG. Okay, this is the most common ERG which is done, because we need to understand the function of the rods and cones even before we try to understand what is happening to the retina, because the rods and cones are the most important cells which are going to be generating your signals. Okay, so unless they work well, you will not be able to assess the other cells in the retina. So unless you have a start, they start the battery for your electrical signals. Okay, unless your rod's health and the cone's health is not good, you will not have further information or further generation of the electrical signals. Multifocal ERG is especially gives you the information about the cone cells, and it tells you about the local health of the retinal area where this examination is done. You have a particular pattern. You can either stimulate a 61 segment or a 103 segment and get the information. Okay, and transient pattern ERG is done with a checkerboard pattern, where you have a stimulus which keeps on reversing, and this reversal causes a wave pattern which is generated, which has a P50 component and a 95 component, where you can differentiate between a maculopathy and an neuropathy. Okay, whether the ganglion cells are working fine or not. So an electroretinogram is a diagnostic tool for examining how the retina functions. The process involves applying light stimuli using the electrodes to record the electrical potentials generated by the retina. These potentials reflect the electrical activities at the level of the rods and cones, as well as the bipolar cells and other cells in the retina. There are scotopic, that is dark adapted, and photopic light conditions, and the rods are mainly tested under the scotopic conditions, while the cones are tested against the photopic conditions. With ISCV standards, patients are exposed to a light stimuli in different regions, different degrees of brightness, in order to stimulate the retina, in combination with a different backlighting, and these calculated averaged separately are the responses which you get from your ERG. And these are masked responses of the retinal cells to the light stimulation, especially the photoreceptors. And you have this measured by having the electrodes at the level of the cornea. ERG signals are very small and they are amplified, and usually they are recorded in microvolts, and it provides the objective quantification of your overall retinal function. You record how do you record this retinal signals? You to do a full field ERG, you would need a Ganzfeld bowl. You can have a both flash stimulation, which is diffuse for the photopic and the scotopic conditions. You can have a calibrated stimulus with the help of the ISCV protocols in your machine. You use electrodes, that is for the ground and the reference electrode, you use a gold cup electrode. You have an amplifier which helps us getting the information from the patient and amplifying the information. Okay, so in the clinical use, your big Ganzfeld is used, where you have the facility to go ahead and do the examination for both the eyes together. You can use mini Ganzfeld in children. Okay, the electrodes which we usually recommend are, for the reference electrodes, we use the skin gold cup electrodes. This is how they look like, and these can be maintained and cleaned. You have to attach a conductive paste over here and then apply it to the patient. Okay, and usually we suggest to them to clean this and maintain these electrodes, because this is very important for the integrity of your signals. Okay, so this I ask them to clean every evening after they finish the examinations, and dry it and hang it in the place where they should not be coiled, and they should just be hung straight directly so that they don't have breaks in between. This is a very thin, fragile wire. So the reference electrodes and the ground electrodes are your skin gold cup electrodes. You have active electrodes. The active electrodes commonly recommended by us are the DTL electrodes. You can also use a jet contact lens electrodes when you're recording the ERGs, especially in the dark adapted state. This is a new prep gel, which helps in cleaning the skin and preparing the skin even before the examination. Then this is the 1020 conductive paste, which you use so that you have the conductivity from the skin and the electrode. Okay. And then you have the DTL electrode over here, which is placed over here from the nasal canthal to the temporal canthal. And you have a wire which takes the signal which is recorded from here at the level of the cornea to the preamplifier. Here are your preamplifier settings, which will, where they are indicated with red, blue, and black, where the black suggests that the ground electrode need to be placed in this place, and your reference electrodes will come in the place where it is indicated by blue. These electrodes are also color indicated, so it is easy for any technician who's using it to incorporate it into the correct responsible respective DINs which are present on the amplifier. Okay, you have a channel 1 for the right eye, you have a channel 2 for the left eye. So to record this, we have a Ganzfeld, we have a protocol. Depending on this image, you will be recording the ground, you will be placing the ground electrode at the forehead and the reference electrode at the temporal canthal, or you can place it at the earlobe also. And your active electrode will be at the corneal level, and then you go ahead and measure the impedance. Impedance is very important because the higher the impedance, you will have higher the noise in your responses. So the technology we have been discussing, you need a stimulator, you need electrodes, you need electrical recording equipment, you need a preamplifier, and you need to keep the status of the patient, dark adapted status or light adapted status of the patient in mind. Okay, so the clinical protocol, you need to see that your patients are fully dilated because you're looking into the mass response. You need to have a dark room with a red light so that you can attach the electrodes conveniently. Then you clean and attach the electrodes with the conductive paste. Apply the corneal electrodes to the patient, and then go ahead with the ISF standard protocols and record the ERG. ERG analysis and recording is done. Then you compare it with your normative database and interpret the results with other complementary tests like the OCT, visual acuity, visual fields, and color vision. Okay, so this is the basic measurement protocol, which is there on the manual, which says from where you need to pick your ERG responses or the protocol. Then you place the electrodes and you look into the impedance. The impedance should be less than 5 kilo ohms. And this is very important. Okay, if your impedance is higher, you will get a lot of noise in your responses. You go ahead and do the patient is dark adapted. That means the patient, we pass the patient's eye for half an hour and then bring the patient to a dark room and remove the patch and attach the electrodes and go ahead with the 4 dark adapted steps. And I will go into further what are the dark adapted steps. Basically, they are like, you showing a very dim light of 0.01 stimuli. Then you have the light intensity being raised to 3 stimuli candelas per second. And then as per the protocol, we follow it. And then we light adapt the patient for 10 minutes. And then go to analysis, save the data, adjust the scale, mark and smooth the waveform or remove the blink artifact which is there, save the test examination parameters which we have done and take a printout. So this briefly explains what has to be done when you record an ERG. See, I told you there is a ISCV standard protocol which is followed by most of the labs in the world, where this specifies that how long the patient should be dark adapted, how long the patient should be light adapted, what are the test protocols which need to be done. Okay, so the test protocols, the test protocols which need to be done are the dark adapted 0.01 ERGs, then you have the dark adapted 3 ERGs, then you have the dark adapted 10 ERG, which is a bright flash ERG. Then you have the oscillatory potentials recorded, then light adapt the patient, then you have the light adapted ERG and the 30 Hertz flicker, which gives us the cone responses. So why these ISF protocols are given are to facilitate us to understand the rod function separately, rod cone function separately, and the cone function separately. So if you see over here, I have already written over here. So when you run a dark adapted ERG, you get a waveform like this, which gives us the information about your rod responses. Okay, when you run a patient with when you do a dark adapted 3 ERG, you get a combined response of both the photoreceptors, that is the rods and cones in this negative deflection. So if you remember my previous slide, I would have said you have a wave over here, which is a negative deflection. And this is which comes from the photoreceptors. Okay, then you have a positive deflection B wave, which comes from the Mueller cells and the amacrine cells. You have one more protocol, which is called the 10 ERG, okay, where you use a very bright flash to stimulate the retina and to see if you get any retinal responses. And this can be used in patients where you have media opacities. You can just run an ERG to understand, is there any retinal function or not. It is very helpful in patients, especially in the clinic, where we have to take a decision to whether to operate this patient or not to operate this patient. Okay. So in patients, and if you want to, look into the ischemic status, like whether the inner retinal layers have been affected or not, you can do an ERG where you can look into these oscillatory potentials, whether these 4 wavelets have been recorded or not. Okay, and cone responses can be taken and at the end recorded with the help of the light adapted ERG. Then exclusively, you can do a pure cone responses by using a light stimuli, which is generated at a very fast speed of 30 Hertz per second, and then a stimulus is recorded. As we all know, rods don't respond to a fast moving light. Okay, so you create a condition where stimuli where you are forcing only the cones to respond to your light. So this is how your ISCV protocol goes, and you have methods of measuring this rod responses. You have A waves, B waves, implicit times and amplitudes which are generated. Okay, so I will go into this probably tomorrow. I think I will just stop my discussion here for the day. I will continue with this tomorrow. If you have any doubts, you can ask me now.
I think, Kiran, there's a question posted in the chat box. You can just have a look.
Due to what reasons does the noise occur which makes the impedance go over 5, and how can it be avoided? It's a very good question. So you have this noise. What is the noise? I said higher the impedance, higher the noise. Okay. So when you're cleaning the patient's skin, you need to be very careful. And because this, especially this facial skin is very sensitive. Okay. So you use a new prep properly only in the area where you want to clean, and you attach the conductive paste and then attach it to the amplifier. So when your cleaning is inadequate, you can get the noise. Okay, you have to look into the grounding of the machine or the area or the room. If your grounding is correct or not, the grounding value has to be less than 0.25. Anything greater than that would cause a lot of interferences in your electrical responses which are being generated, because you have these signals are very small. These are in microvolts, so you can have these electrical interferences interfering with your noise which are higher. Okay, then the other common reason where your noise can be there is when there is a small leakage of these potentials which are there. So usually in a clinical scenario, what we do is we first find out the grounding of the room, how good it is. We ask the technician to clean the skin so that the impedance is always less than 5. And we use electrodes which are like the DTL electrodes or the jet electrodes, which are steady and give us a good impedance values. We see the patient always keeps his legs on a carpet or a wooden floor, because we don't want any leakage of the electrode impulses to happen, okay, or the signals to happen, or the ions to happen. So keeping all this thing, you can definitely reduce the noise. And in case if the noise still continues to be there, what we usually suggest is intertwine the reference electrode and the active electrode together. Okay, intertwine means you just tie them together and keep them as close as possible to each other, and then put them onto the amplifier. So definitely the noise comes down. Okay, if the noise still continues to be there, please clean the forehead and the earlobe and attach the electrodes again. And if you feel the impedance is not going lower, what I suggest is change the electrode, change the DTL. Okay, so it has been found that when you use a new DTL, probably you get better responses. So probably the reason could be your a bad DTL which is not getting you the impedance. is there formal ERG also? There is no formal ERG. ERGs can be of 3 types. It is a full field ERG because it is a mass response, multifocal ERG because you're taking the focal responses and multiple
I'm
responses.
asking about foveal ERG. That's misprinted. Sorry for the misprint. The question is repeated again. Is there a foveal ERG also?
Foveal ERG, no, we don't do foveal ERG in the clinic. Yes, it is done with the research applications where you want to only understand the foveal responses. But here what we do is we do a multifoveal ERG. That is, you record the foveal responses in combination to the other areas like the parafoveal and the perifoveal and the peripheral responses. Okay, so foveal ERG is not possible in the clinical scenario. You can only record a multifocal ERG in your clinical scenario. The next question is, what is the effect of pupil size while using the pattern stimuli? So as the name suggests, the pattern stimuli has to be seen clearly by the patient. Okay, the information of the pattern has to be imprinted onto the retina at the macular level, and then it has to be processed at the level of your brain. Okay, so if you have a blurred stimuli which is being focused on your retina, you will have the blurred information which goes to the brain. Okay, so the effect of pupil size is very important. You cannot do a pattern VEP because in a dilated state, because you will not be, there'll be a lot of defocus effect which are happening. Okay, so in a dilated pupil, you will get a lot of unwanted responses which will be shown, or an unclear defocused image will be seen by the macula, which will be studied by the retina also in the same way and processed by at the level of the brain also in the same way. So it will give you a delayed information, okay, when you're recording the VEP. So the pupil size is very important. You, in case possible, please make a habit to measure the pupil size and write it down. In case you're doing an ERG or a VEP, it is always better to put your pupil size down, okay? And for ERG, we suggest that the pupil should be dilated, okay, because we are always aiming for a mass responses, especially when you're doing a flash ERG and a multifocal ERG. We are looking at the complete information which we want to get from the photoreceptors, okay. But when we are using pattern ERG, there I'm very particular that my patient is able to perceive the patterns 100%. So I'm very particular that the normal pupil size is maintained. He's not dilated. His visual correction is on. So if a patient has a -5 diopters of myopia or a hyperopia, I would insist that the patient wears his glasses and then you record the responses. And the manual also suggests the same thing, okay? Ma'am, can you please explain again regarding A, B, C wave and their importance? Okay, ERG, as you know, on the OCT, when you look at the OCT, what you see, OCT is a structural information. It gives you the information about your outer retina, which is your rods and cones, correct? Then you have the inner retina, correct? So you, a similar way when the responses are recorded from the ERG, I will use this image itself, okay? This is a common image which we usually try and make people understand. Okay, we use this dark adapted 3 ERG, that is the combined rod cone responses, to explain our ERG because it is simpler to explain it that way. Here you see the A wave. Is my cursor visible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So here you have this A wave. This A wave is what I was talking about, is the negative deflection which you get from the photoreceptors. So depending on the health of the rods and cones, your A wave will be generated. So a flash of light is hit into the retina and it is being captured by your photoreceptors, both the rods and cones, and immediate response which you get after the flash of light will be this A wave or a negative deflection, okay? And this is a combination of both the photoreceptors, your rods and cones. You can't differentiate a rods and cone responses on your dark adapted eye. So you have this A wave generated from the photoreceptors. Then you have this B wave. Okay, this B wave gives you the information about the Mueller cells. We all know Mueller cells are the cells which form the building block of the retina. All the cells, all the layers, that is the bipolar, the ganglion cells, the amacrine cells, the horizontal cells, the interconnecting cells, everybody is sitting within the Mueller cells. And this Mueller cells are responsible for generating this B wave. Okay, so for the outer retina is the A wave, the inner retina is your B wave. So whenever I'm looking at the health of my outer retina, that is when I'm looking at the rods and cones, I will be looking at the A wave. Whenever I'm looking at the inner retina in conditions like central retinal vein occlusion, I will look into the inner retina, whether the inner retinal responses are generated or not, whether I'm looking at bipolar cells responses, where I'm looking at the amacrine cell responses, I'll be looking at this B wave. So you have the A waves from the photoreceptors, B wave from the inner retinal layer, which is from your bipolar cells and your Mueller cells. Okay. Then you have something called the C waves. C wave cannot be looked into these wave patterns because we don't stimulate that type of intensity and a stimulus to record a C wave on your ERG. Okay. C wave can be recorded exclusively, which is from the RPE in a separate test called the electrooculography. Okay. So in an ERG waveform, what do you see? In an ERG waveform, I see a wave, I see a B wave, and I see an oscillatory potential. What is an oscillatory potential? Oscillatory potential is nothing but a wavelet, which is shown like here. Okay, it is a small set of wavelets which has OP1, OP2, OP3, OP4, and they have some amount of amplitude. What do they indicate? How are they? First, let me go back and say how are they? Recognize whether they are present or not. Usually, they are found on the ascending limb. Ascending limb means the limb which is going upper. Okay, on your B wave. They are found on the ascending limb of the B wave, and they give us the information on the health of the amacrine cells, whether they are functioning or not, whether the continuity between the outer and the inner retinal layers is there or not. Okay, so the A wave is from your photoreceptors, B wave is from your Mueller cells and the bipolar cells. The C wave is from the RP, which is not there in the ISF protocols for recording while the ERG is done, but you can record this function of the RP separately with the help of the EOG. Okay. But why are these different waveforms present? I told you we can change the light stimulus. The light stimulus can be made very dim to record your rod functions, or it can be made very bright with the lights on in the room to record your cone functions. Okay, so that is why you have this different types of waveforms generated. And the most common waveform which you represent an electro ERG response is this response of your wave, which has a negative deflection and a positive deflection with a A wave and B wave. So when I'm telling about an A wave and when I'm saying an ERG waveform, if a negative deflection and a positive deflection, I can say ERG negative and a positive wave. I can also have a condition where I can have a negative ERG, I can have a negative positive ERG not reaching the baseline. So we all know there are diseases where you have negative ERG is happening, like in the congenital stationary night blindnesses, where you have this negative ERGs. We can go over it as we go further in our discussions. Okay. Definitely, I would be very happy to discuss all those conditions and different waveforms which are generated because of these diseases.
There are a few more questions.
Yeah, what is critical flicker fusion? We usually don't use the critical flicker fusion here. We just use only the flicker fusion. Flicker, basically, we flicker the light at a very fast speed to get the information. Is there a foveal ERG? No, we don't do foveal ERG, the clinical scenario. It is only done under the research conditions, which are very, very, standardized and stimulated and controlled environment where you stimulate only your fovea, you place a micro electrode and you get the responses. What is the use of pupillography? Pupillography helps us you to measure the size of the pupil, whether it is a small pupil when you're recording or a large pupil, how your pupil size varies in the conditions of the scotopic recordings, how your pupil size varies in the normal or photopic conditions. Because the light reaching the retina is very important when you're doing these examinations, okay? So it helps you to understand the way your pupil responses to the light. What is the clinical use of blue flash ERG and red flash ERG? Definitely, I will discuss about this blue flash ERG and red flash ERG tomorrow or day after tomorrow when we are covering the full field ERG. Then, basically, these are different light stimuli. Here, whatever I have written down for the full field ERG is basically we are using a white light. Okay, and we are stimulating the retina by increasing or decreasing the intensity of the light and changing the interstimuli between the two averages of the responses which are recorded. And in blue flash ERG and red flash ERG, I am concentrating especially on my rods or concentrating especially on my cones and looking into how my photoreceptors are acting to that light and seeing only I can use this ERG commonly for all diseases in a clinical condition. But when I'm using a blue flash or a red flash ERG, I am looking into a very focused area of my disease, whether it's a diabetic retinopathy or a glaucoma, which I'm intending. So the applications of your blue flash and a red flash will be very limited in a clinical scenario. But a full field ERG can be done on any patient wherever you want to understand the normal retinal function. Okay, and the importance of the full field ERG recorded in an ISCV protocol with a Roland machine or with any other machine which follows the ISCV protocol is that waveform can be studied throughout the world, because you have a uniform way of representing the data, where the ISF follows the uniform way or a standardized way of presenting the information to the retina and capturing the information and then presenting it to the doctors. So it makes things very easier as a clinician for me to understand whether, if I say I'm seeing this report from a lab which is ISCV protocols have been followed, and if I'm seeing a extinguished waveform and a non-recordable waveform, I can confidently make the patient say that yes, he has retinitis pigmentosa, and he will have these changes. Or if I follow up a patient with a multifocal ERG done from one lab which follows the ISF protocol, and if the patient is shifted to another place or a country, and if I go ahead and do a multifocal ERG in that lab, and if I record the responses, I can compare two reports of these two labs, because this protocol, which is designed and incorporated into the equipment, helps me to uniformly understand these responses in a standardized way. Okay. Excellent presentation and good theory. Thanks. Anything else? I think I'm exhausted of the questions over here. Anything else, please feel free to write to me. I think we have a coordinator from your side. In case if I have missed anything in your presentation today and you want more information about it, I would be happy to do that. You want me to again explain you some concepts? Yes, I'll feel happy to do that also. And it's already 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kiranji, for so patiently explaining and taking so many questions from our side. And I will be eagerly waiting for tomorrow class. But at the same time, we understand these informations are volatile to us. So I would request that if you have any soft copy of any nice book of electrophysiology, so that we can, a concise book which is not too vast to go through, but then at the same time everybody can go through for our reading, so that we can also grasp the things better and continue with class.
Sure. 10 years later, 10 years before, there was a book which was, all the information was compiled into a book at Shankar Nethralaya. Okay. I do have a soft copy of the book. I will share that with all of you. And I do suggest the ISF standard protocols for all the tests, like the ERG, VEP, EOG has been well defined. And there are some lectures which are being given by the people who have been in the electrophysiological field, like Dr. Subhadra from LVP, Dr. Parveen Sain, Dr. Ambika from the neuro department, and from few doctors from AIMS. They have, like how you have asked the questions, people have asked questions based on these ERGs to them, and they have answered these questions. So I will share you the soft copies of all of that. And anybody who's in the clinic can go through them and, really have a vast knowledge information about the electrophysiological test. We can also share you some YouTube videos which are there on the YouTube, which are floating, and you can view them and watch them and learn more about the subject. Thank you all for showing interest in electrophysiology. It is really nice being here today.
Thank you, Musabi. Thank you everyone for the time.
Thank you. We'll join tomorrow.
Tomorrow we'll meet again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.